Good afternoon and welcome to today's presentation, Overview of Safety and Health Hazards in Roofing Construction. Before we begin our presentation today, I would like to take a few moments to go over some housekeeping items. We will be recording this webinar, and this webinar is CLE approved, and we will be asking that you enter a passcode for CLE credit a few times throughout the presentation. In today's webinar, Mr. O'Connell will provide a general overview of the various health hazards to which roofing construction workers may be exposed. He will discuss chemical hazards, physical hazards, environmental hazards, and ergonomic hazards. To give you a little background about our presenter, Daniel O'Connell, he is president and founder of SAFETRAN LLC. During his tenure, he successfully directed a team of safety engineers and training instructors in California. Mr. O'Connell is widely recognized as an expert in construction and regulatory cases and has extensive experience as a leader and member of many industry and governmental safety advisory groups. Mr. O'Connell's extensive background in roofing construction and transport served as the catalyst to his advisory activities. He was influential in proposing new and revised safety improvements in the roofing trade, especially related to hazardous chemicals in the workplace. Mr. O'Connell is also a frequent lecturer with speaking engagements at national organizations such as the American Society of Safety Engineers, United Brotherhood of Carpenters, and various roofing contractor organizations. Mr. O'Connell is a board-certified hazardous materials manager, a certified environmental safety and health trainer, and a board-certified construction health and safety technologist. For those of our attendees who require a code word for tracking purposes, the code word for today is roofing. During the presentation, we will take short breaks, and during that time, we will ask that you enter this code into the chat feature for CLE reporting purposes. The chat feature is located to the right of your screen. Please remember that if you are applying for CLE credit, you must log onto your computer as yourself. If you have attempted to log on and received an error, or if you are listening via telephone, please email the passcode both times that is requested, and please state the time that you have entered your code in your email. Also, please remember to complete the survey that will appear on your screen at the end of the presentation. As a provider of CLE credits, we are required to have supportive information that you have attended, and in many states the survey is required. Mr. O'Connell welcomes your questions. Please use the chat feature to submit your questions throughout the presentation. We will take short intermittent breaks so that Mr. O'Connell can respond. Thank you all again for attending today, and Daniel, the presentation is now turned over to you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. This is Daniel O'Connell. I look forward to spending an hour with you this afternoon and to talk about the principal causes of injury in an overview of safety and health hazards of roofing construction. If everyone is ready, let's move on to our introduction. Advance, please. Slide 6 provides an objective of today's program, which is the prevention and control of injury and illness in roofing. The presentation today is based upon recognized safety and health hazards that are trade-specific to the roofing construction industry. In addition, examples of OSHA safety violations, unsafe work practices, or dangerous conditions are included, as identified during recent on-site roofing safety inspections and audits. In appreciation to the many dedicated and passionate safety professionals serving the roofing and construction industry, I share my thanks today. Throughout today's webinar, we will share many issues affecting worker safety in the roofing construction trade, and in some cases, found a sustained pattern of behavior that demonstrates non-acceptance, conformance, or compliance with regulatory and roofing industry customs, practices, and/or standards for safety. Here are some of the most common safety violations identified on roofing construction projects. Exposure to falls from the rooftop. No fall protection equipment. Illegal fall protection equipment. Exposure to falls into or onto skylights or open roof holes. Roofing installation also exposes workers to extremely flammable solvents and adhesives, often referred to as trade products, which contain toxic chemical properties, and also big on the list in the Sun Belt states, is heat illness exposure issues. Especially important is drinking water, its quantity, quality, and temperature. Also, hot kettle operations and use of molten asphalt and rubber for roofing application. Also, pneumatic tool safety issues, air compressors, electrical hazards and grounding of generators, ground fault circuit interrupters, extension and tool cord conditions, and that's just a sampling of the issues we'll look at today. As shown on slide 6, roofing construction is varied and include many state-of-the-art roofing installation categories such as spray polyurethane foam roofing, or also called SPF roofing system. SPF-based roofing systems are constructed by mixing and spraying a two-component liquid that forms the base of an adhered roofing system. Also, state-of-the-art roofing includes single-ply, referred to as cool roof projects, once again most predominant in the Sun Belt states. Solar roofing installation is also being self-performed by some roofing contractors, and even green roofing, which is a hybrid of landscape and roofing technology. As we look at some of the roof work that is performed out there, we find use of impervious membrane to cover rooftops, which cut energy by reflecting sunlight. One caveat is roofers must use highly flammable adhesives and solvents during installation. First, they wipe down the seams with a solvent, then they glue the sheets in place with highly flammable adhesives and adhesion by specialized fasteners. Spray foam roofing, a commercial roofing process used for re-roofing projects, exposes roofers to polyurethane polymers containing isocyanates. According to the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health in 2004, isocyanates are the leading attributable cause of work-related asthma. Roofers also install PVC irrigation systems for green roofing projects using flammable primers, glues, and solvents. And on occasion, roofers perform light electrical work, such as connecting a roof exhaust fan, and at times more advanced electrical on solar roofing projects, as electrical and arc blast and electrocution hazards also exist. More traditional forms of roofing construction include hot asphalt, shake and shingle, and tile roofing with aggregate-based products like slate, clay, or concrete. Now we will look at some of the hazards for each roofing application on the next slide, please. In slide 7, we look at roofing safety and the specific health hazards. The focus of slide 7 is roofing type and work hazards. And at the top of the left column, roofing type, and directly below is a list of several other roofing construction applications starting with single ply down through shake and shingle. In the column directly to the right are the related potential health and safety hazards of each application. If we start with single ply, used here in the generic form, it also includes thermoplastic membrane, cool roof, and white roof installations. Single ply roofing includes rubber polymer membranes laid down as a single layer over a low or steep slope roof. Roofers use solvents and adhesives to clean and glue down materials, and both have toxic and flammable properties, requiring ANSI-approved personal protective equipment. also known as PPE, which include chemical gloves, goggles, safety glasses, face shields, impervious aprons or suits, and other appropriate chemical PPE to prevent exposure to fumes and skin absorption. In addition, as mentioned in one of the opening slides, roofing hazards are broken down into 4 hazard categories: physical, chemical, environmental, and ergonomic hazards. As we consider some of the predominant physical hazards, let us take a look at some of the tasks where roofers are most exposed to injury in the workplace. At the top of the list, or key roofing hazards, would be falls from height, ladders, roof holes, skylights, tripping hazards, scaffolding, air staplers and nailers, falling objects, traffic control and flagging, electrical hazards, housekeeping and sanitation, pneumatic tools and compressors, and power tool use. In addition, when roofers first get on site to start a new roofing project, there are a differing range of accident potentials that come from preparatory work. For example, when roofers do the roof rip-off, which is a form of demolition, they are exposed to falls from rooftops or into roof openings and skylights, falls onto exposed vertical impalement hazards such as plumbing, vertical pipe penetration, conduit, or even contact with overhead power lines. Roofers and their companies also fail to act safely when they remove tool safety guards in an effort to get the job done faster or easier, or fail to properly ground power generators. We especially see that on larger commercial projects. Also, the use of small portable generators that are found out on the job site without ground fault circuit interrupters. Or they use damaged extension or tool cords, which result in potential shock or electrocution hazards, especially during inclement weather. They use extremely flammable liquids and gases also to do the work. And sometimes they forget to have fire extinguishers available at the rooftop or during loading of roofing materials, potentially injure themselves, resulting in ergonomic injuries from continuous and repetitive motion roofing and demolition work. In the delivery of roofing materials, the use of hydraulic roof conveyors, scissor trucks, and aerial reach equipment can also result in injury from crushing or caught in between injury. Forklift operations sometimes involve the loss of load at high elevation, and scissor truck upset are common issues that we have to look at all the time on job sites. And, of course, the issue of forklift operation without proper seat belts and little or no operator safety training. Also, respiratory protection would be indicated when roofers are exposed to vapors above the OSHA permissible exposure limit, also known as PEL, where air sampling may also be required or indicated. Fire prevention and use of fire extinguishers and training are also important protective elements to be included for roofer training. In a study presented by the Journal of Safety, Health, and Environmental Research by Dr. Choi, assistant professor at the University of Wisconsin, he outlines the costs of injuries in roofing construction, stating, quote, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the construction industry sector reported that the rate of fatal occupational injuries and falls from roofs have increased to new highs. Then, according to a 2013 fatal work injury rate by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, out of all construction trades, the roofers had the highest amount of fatalities and topped the list with 38.7%. Advance to the next slide, please. Slide 8 details occupational exposures to lead. And slide 8 shows a roofer soldering a pipe collar with a propane torch and a roll of lead solder in his hand. As no respirator or gloves were being worn in this case, it was probable that lead smoke and fume were being inhaled and potential contact contamination to the exposed skin, in this case of the roofer's hands. Roofer lead exposure comes from soft lead solder and the use of flexible lead roof collars, and also other materials made from lead, found on roofing construction projects. And lead is most commonly absorbed into the body by inhalation during soldering. When workers breathe in lead as a dust, fume, or mist, their lungs and upper respiratory tract absorb it into the body. They can also absorb lead through the digestive system if it enters the mouth and is digested. As many roofers handle lead collars without gloves or other protective considerations. Thinking about lead reminds me of a roofing contractor discovered using flammable chemical products, hot asphalt, gas, and propane. And when asked by the on-site safety inspector where they kept their safety data sheets, also known as MSDS, the contractor responded by saying, "What hazmat? We don't have hazardous materials in roofing." End quote. As the roofing construction industry transitions away from old school beliefs to embracing current safety standards, workers are better protected and injury and fatality rates lower. A publication by the California Department of Public Health called New Health Dangers from Lead is a bulletin on lead exposure and safety. During lead soldering, temperatures reach above 500 degrees Celsius, or 930 degrees Fahrenheit. When lead begins to fume, an inhalation risk increases substantially. There are very strict OSHA regulations in all states to protect workers from lead. The OSHA 29 Code of Federal Regulations 1926.62 Construction Safety Standard applies to employers engaged in any construction work where an employee may be exposed to lead. One of the requirements for this section requires employers to conduct an initial exposure assessment to determine if any employee may be exposed to lead at or above the action level. As stated by federal OSHA, quote, historically lead has been poisoning workers for thousands of years. Lead can damage the central nervous system, cardiovascular system, reproductive, and hematological systems, including the kidneys. When absorbed into the body in high enough doses, lead can be toxic. In addition, workers' lead exposure can harm their children's development. In an advanced study by Dr. Gadrowski of the Johns Hopkins University, found that even small amounts of lead exposure may be damaging to children. The report published in the Archives of Internal Medicine looked at the records of 769 healthy youth ages 12 to 20 with average blood lead levels of 1.5 micrograms per deciliter, well below the 10 microgram threshold level of action per the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Based upon all available information, we highly recommend medical surveillance for roofers and their families to determine blood lead levels. Advance, please. Now at slide 9, we look at toxic solvents and adhesives. And based on the use of toxic solvents and adhesives in the roofing trade, many operations have been found to have a casual approach to chemical use on the job site. Similar to lead, many roofing operations fail to inform workers with proper safety training and PPE. Basically, there are two types of health effects from chemical exposure: acute and chronic. Roofing chemical exposures are primarily derived from common roofing trade products, such as solvents, cleaners, mastics, and adhesives. Solvent exposure is especially prevalent throughout the solvent wipe-down procedure. To many companies and workers, the process of cleaning a roofing membrane with a cloth and solvent seems relatively innocent. But in all actuality, it puts workers at risk by exposure to inhalation and absorption, not to mention the fire hazard. Since xylene, a common solvent found on roofing construction projects, may place workers at greater risk to falls after working with or around xylene and the fumes from xylene and other flammable solvents. Let's take a closer look at this subject. In a 2007 study on xylene by the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry, also known as ATSDR, found that inhalation concentrations as low as 50 parts per million of xylene produced irritant effects on the eyes, skin, and mucous membranes, impaired respiratory function, and mild central nervous system effects, including headache and dizziness. Advance, please, to the next section. And this brings us to the question section, and I will hand this back to Emily.
Okay, and before we begin the question and answer segment, I ask that all the attendees type the passcode into the chat feature. Okay, our first question is, what is the most common type of roofing injury? Specifically during the years 2013 and 2014.
Emily, would you like one of the viewers to respond, or shall I provide an answer?
If you could provide an answer, that would be great. Thank you.
Absolutely. And in that case, the most common type of roofing injury are fall injuries.
Okay, and out of all construction workers, who has the highest overall cost for medical claims?
And the answer to that question is roofers and carpenters. Reviewing more than 30,000 worker claims among North Carolina Home Builders Association members and their subcontractors, found roofers and carpenters were two major occupations having greater than average medical costs. Can it be any less today? Next question.
Okay, can you name the most common safety violations found on roofing projects by OSHA?
Yes, OSHA names falls, and let's see, during 2014, so far this year, there have been 12 fall citations issued by OSHA regarding violations of the fall protection standards. Okay?
Okay, and among the most dangerous jobs in the U.S., how are roofers ranked?
They are ranked very, very high. Actually, they are number 7 on the list according to the Bureau of Labor Standards.
Okay, those are all for now. You can continue on with the presentation.
Very good. Thank you, Emily. We are now on slide 7, and we'll look at some of the issues related to fall hazards in roofing. Roofers can sustain a fall from any of the following ways. Ladders not properly tied off before use, top and bottom, or illegal ladder use, such as leaning ladders, use of damaged or defective ladders, or improper ladder choice, such as using a ladder that's too small and thereby the roofer has to put himself in danger when he or she climbs the ladder and reaches the end before they actually achieve the level of choice. Also, improper roof hatch access or no guardrails. Also, scaffolding issues. And some scaffolds that are set up, we've seen that they're, especially on projects related to roofing, we find damaged or illegal equipment that's set up, missing railings, roofers climbing cross members for access because there are proper ladders are not installed on some of the scaffolds. Also, no roofing warning lines and headers, which are set up by the roofing foreman to establish a heads up to the roofers working on the rooftop. And we have also listed several online roofing safety resources on our final slide that you can take a look at. But here's an OSHA report headline. Violation of OSHA regulations cause fatal fall. And in this particular case, on July 30, 86, as an illustration, a 37-year-old male roofer died after he stepped through a partially covered skylight opening and fell 27 feet below. Along with 7 other workers, the victim was installing rolled rubber roofing materials, single ply, on a large building. The roof contained 35 unguarded 4x4 openings where skylights were to be installed. While handling a roll of roofing material, the victim stepped back and fell through an opening that had been partially covered by another roll of roofing material. He died the following day. In a California Fatal Assessment and Control Evaluation report from the California Department of Public Health, a 30-year-old solar panel installer died after he fell 45 feet off the roof of a 3-story apartment building. He was part of a 3-person crew working to install solar panels on a sloped roof. The worker walked backwards and stepped off the roof while checking the position of some brackets. No one was wearing personal fall protection equipment, and there was no other fall protection system in place. According to the U.S. Department of Labor, reported that fatal work injuries involving falls are the leading cause of construction fatality. Falls from ladders and roofs still account for the majority of falls. The U.S. Department of Labor lists falls as one of the leading causes of traumatic occupational death, accounting for 8% of all occupational fatalities from trauma. Falls are the most frequent cause of fatalities at construction sites and annually account for 1 of every 3 construction-related deaths. Advanced slide, please. Slide 12 gives us a view of skylights and open roof holes, which are frequently identified during on-site roofing safety inspections. Recent NIOSH investigations suggest that employers and workers may not fully recognize or comprehend the gravity of fall injury threat associated with working near unprotected skylights and roof openings. As a result, skylights and roof openings are left unguarded or uncovered as workers continue to suffer injury and death. Solution: Skylight Safety training. Employers should take the following measures to help prevent roofer injuries and fatalities from falls through skylights and roof openings. 1. Develop and implement and enforce comprehensive written fall prevention program elements. that at a minimum comply with applicable OSHA fall prevention standards. Also, assign a competent person to inspect the worksite before work begins. They can actually do that at the pre-work stage where they're doing the quotes and takeoffs to identify fall hazards and determine appropriate fall prevention systems for workers and actually work it into the bid. For work around skylights and work related to roof and floor openings, they should require and provide the use of appropriate training and fall prevention solutions, including full skylight covers or metal screens, railings or guardrails around the skylight or opening, or fall protection if the previous two examples are not in place. And by the way, those are all OSHA regulations. So by, of course, having those on the job, we're looking at the minimum safety requirements for OSHA. Okay, next slide, please. Roofing kettle safety is our next issue of concern. And to set the tone for this section regarding roofing kettle hazards, let's take a few seconds to look at a few true stories. A 40-year-old male was sprayed with hot tar when a pipe on a tar pump, which is part of the kettle comes complete with a motor that pumps the hot molten materials out through pipes. He suffered partial thickness burns over 2.5% of his hands, third-degree burns over his hands. He was hospitalized for 13 days. In another case, a 41-year-old male was walking backwards along a 20-foot roof with a hot tar dispenser, a sort of a roller that allows hot tar to drip onto the roof. When he reached the edge of the roof, he lost his balance and fell backward. The dispenser got stuck on the roof but tilted down, pouring hot tar on the victim as he fell. He had multiple fractures along with a grade 3 liver laceration and 15% of his total body surface area burned. He died 3 weeks later in a hospital. Also, a 26-year-old female slipped and fell on a roof covered with hot tar. She suffered partial burns over 10% of her body and was treated at the burn center for 26 days. As you can see, that slide shows a blow-up of a thermostat taken directly off that particular kettle, and in this particular case, the material in that kettle is now at a temperature exceeding 600 degrees. One of the issues that we find during the last several safety inspections for roof projects was a number of untrained kettle tenders, as the term applies to workers who staff, man, and fill the kettle, hot kettle, with lugs of material. It's common to find kettle tenders or apprentices working at a hot kettle without the minimum required protective equipment per OSHA. Many workers fail to understand how serious a kettle burn can be. When working next to a hot kettle, it is mandatory that workers wear protective covering to shield themselves from the dangers of fire and hot tar by wearing fire-resistant apparel, gloves, and more. They must wear a full face shield with safety glasses to protect their eyes and face from 600-degree molten material. When a kettle tender loads heavy lugs of solid asphalt or rubber into a superheated kettle, they can be seriously injured from splashes emanating from a 600-degree molten asphalt or rubber. Once materials are heated to the operating or pumping temperature, hot asphalt is commonly hoisted up the side of a building by rope, increasing the potential for burns. OSHA has special regulations required for performing this type of work, and for good reason. In addition, roofers pump hot asphalt onto the rooftop by a system of pipes and lines set up and supported by framework, sometimes called A-frames, but we have even seen extension ladders used, which is an old-school illegal practice. Another OSHA headline reads, "Worker's death after explosion of hot kettle leads to a $7,500 OSHA fine for an Ohio firm." An Ohio company's failure to provide safety training that could have prevented a fatal accident has resulted in citations from the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. They fined XYZ Construction $7,500 for 5 alleged serious violations of the Safety Act following an investigation of the explosion of a tar kettle at the work site in Ohio. According to an OSHA compliance officer, the investigation revealed that employees were neither properly trained nor given proper personal protective equipment. Had these safety precautions been in place, this tragedy may have been avoided. An OSHA citations to companies for failing to conduct regular inspections of a job site by qualified workers, also failing to have qualified equipment operators, failing to train employees to recognize unsafe conditions, and train workers to be careful when using hazardous chemical products. The chemical was also cited for failing to make arrangements to provide prompt medical attention. All of these resulted in an OSHA serious fine. And one of the illegal carry procedures for hot materials is that none of those types of molten materials may be carried up a ladder. In California, that's California Code of Regulations, Section 1725, although we do see this frequently on job sites. When it comes to hot asphalt pumping, we have also identified a number of illegal A-frames set up to carry the load of transfer pipes. And recently saw an illegal setup of a ladder used to carry these pipes at a new hospital being built in Oakland, California. This dangerous and illegal practice has now become a standard operation on many roofing projects. There are several PPE, personal protective equipment recommendations by the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health to minimize the risks of burns and lung ailment from hot asphalt fumes. Workers and roofers should wear the following types of PPE: hard hat, goggles, safety glasses with side shields, full face shield, respirators when necessary, heat-resistant cotton shirts with long sleeves, no exposed skin, leather or heat-resistant gloves, long pants with no cuffs, and non-skid boots. All factor into overall body protection for roofers working at the hot kettle. In addition to roofing kettle use, we also have to consider the gas that's used to fire the kettle, and that would be propane and LPG. Many roofing operations fail to inspect gas pipes, hoses, connections, and valves attached to their propane or LPG cylinders. We find many illegal propane cylinders still in use today. And since companies often refill their own LPG cylinders from a large tank on their own property, they bypass the requirements to conduct mandatory hydro tests for the smaller containers, and they continue to use outdated and illegal valves. Currently, valves that are used on small propane tanks, which also include the backyard barbecue, have an overfill prevention device. The valves are referred to as an OPD. And these devices have been specified by the National Fire Prevention Association under Title 58 of the Liquefied Petroleum Gas Code since April 1st, 2002. Also, leaking propane or LPG has been identified on recent inspection of roof work sites. And these hazards need to be controlled, as many times hot asphalt kettles are staged within a few feet of homes, apartments, and buildings, including high-density residential zones where roofers have no idea necessarily who is below them while they are tending to rooftop operations, while the hot kettle is operating below unattended. We found scant evidence of barricades, observers, signage, or additional fire suppression equipment staged near propane or LPG delivery tanks during hot roofing work. Although a number of projects did have kettle tender present, some of the fire extinguishers found near active roofing kettles were either discharged out of certification or found to be the wrong size or type. Okay, we're going to advance to the next slide, please, and take a look at asphalt fume exposure. And this subject dovetails in nicely with the previous topic of kettle safety, and is listed by OSHA and the Center for Disease Control as a respiratory inhalation hazard. In a CDC study, bronchitis was reported by roofers as an issue of concern, and since so many roofing projects use some type of molten asphalt or rubber, workers' fume control is paramount. A safety data sheet for asphalt used in roofing by the Owens Corning Company indicates the following health warnings. Inhalation of vapors, fumes, or mist produced by asphalt may be irritating to the respiratory system. And also NIOSH found that in a 2000 study, asphalt fumes, once again, are considered a potential occupational carcinogen. Studies of workers exposed to asphalt fumes have not established an association between the fumes and other injury, although fumes from the product may cause severe irritation, redness, and blurred vision. This product may be harmful if fatal or swallowed, obviously, and chronic respiratory skin conditions may develop from workers exposed to these types of products. Next slide, please. At this point, we're going to take a look at some of the ergonomic hazards and issues involved in the roofing trade. And the work task shown in the slide is a roof tear-off or rip-off demolition project. The cleanest stage of the job, although prior to that, all of those materials are still in piles on the rooftop there. And ergonomic injury is also referred to as work-related musculoskeletal disorder, or WRMD. The big three roofing ergonomic risk factors are force, how much you lift, push, or pull, repetition, how often the task is performed, and posture, or body position. Other potential ergonomic risk factors include vibration, contact stress, sustained exertions, cold temperatures, and physical condition or a pre-existing health issue all exacerbate the ergonomic hazards for roofers. And we'll advance to the next slide, please. Here we talk about contact hazards. And slide 16 shows some typical rooftop impalement hazards. And notice the pipes directly behind the roofer. Vertical roof penetrations like these also include sharp-edged vertical conduit or rebar, reinforcing steel hazards that should be controlled but rarely are. If a roofer or worker falls onto one of these, beyond the immediate soft tissue damage that will result, if the pipe is sharp enough or has a small enough diameter, penetration into the body resulting in serious internal injuries or death is something that must be considered. Protection for that hazard is guard all protecting ends of pipes and steel with proper caps or wooden troughs. Also, you can bend the pipe or the rebar so exposed ends are no longer upright in vertical order. And also, when employees are working at any height above exposed vertical rebar or pipes or other small diameter roof penetrations, fall protection and prevention can be the first line of defense against impalement. For recent roofing safety inspections, workers were exposed to roof penetrations and impalement hazards on 140 projects, and out of the 140 projects inspected, 75 had impalement safety verified. Also, greater than 50% of all inspected roofing construction projects, or 1 out of 2, impalement hazards. Okay, we'll advance to the next slide, please. This takes us to a look at environmental hazards. Roofers who are exposed to extreme heat conditions on roofing projects are at risk of heat stress illness. We do a lot of inspection work in the San Joaquin and Sacramento Valley, and when it's hot there, as you ascend to the roof level and begin walking across an active roofing work zone, the temperature of that area is so much hotter than any place else on a project, on that construction job, that exposure to this type of heat can expose one to heat stroke, heat exhaustion, heat cramps, or heat rash. Heat can also increase the risk of injuries, or workers may result in sweaty palms, fogged up safety glasses, and dizziness can result in falls off ladders. Also, burns from hot asphalt or torch use may also occur as a result of accidental contact with hot surfaces or steam once you are heat stressed. Workers are at greater risk at heat stress, including those who are 65 years of age or older, are overweight, or have heart disease, high blood pressure, or take medications that may be affected by extreme heat conditions. Symptoms of heat stroke also include hot or dry skin or profuse sweating, hallucinations, chills, throbbing headache, high body temperature, confusion and dizziness, and slurred speech. We will now advance to the next section, which is, I've included this resource section here as selected internet resources that are available for more information on roofing safety. And at this point, I would like to thank everyone for promoting safe roofing, and also for attending today's webinar. Also available upon request are white papers on roofing safety that I have provided to TASA, and those are available upon request. So I'll hand this back to Emily, and thank you all very much.
Thank you. And could all the attendees please type the passcode once again into the chat feature? Okay, our first question is, are there any rules that require the use of scaffolding instead of a ladder during roofing repairs? Such as in commercial roofing, do you have to use scaffolding?
It's more of a best management practice, and we often advise workers and their crews that if a rolling scaffold, for example, is a better choice and safer for roofers to use under certain circumstances and during certain types of work, then we recommend that. But there isn't an actual hard cast OSHA regulation that says you must use a scaffold here and you must use a ladder there. With the exception of the scaffolding OSHA regulations, of course, have a lot of order and mandates that certainly are in place, and I don't want to confuse that. So, yes, I hope I answered the question.
Okay, and who is required to place the railings around the skylight area, the roofer or the builder?
Okay, that's a very, very good question, and actually that often comes up, and frankly, it doesn't matter who does it as long as it gets done. But one thing is for sure, the roofers are not supposed to start work there if there is an exposed skylight. And one of the benefits of outlining safety measures in the contract language is that those types of issues are decided upon early in the project, and when everyone puts ink on paper and signs their name saying, I agree to this, part of that agreement should also be safety language based on who will establish barriers, borders, handrail, guardrail around structures such as open floor holes or skylights. And that is a very good question. But once again, the roofers, they can build it, but there may be some trade issues there, especially if it's a union project. Carpenters may be opposed to that. So once again, take it to the general contractor, and sounds like a safety timeout to me.
Okay, our next question is hoisting a hot kettle by a rope acceptable by OSHA standards?
It is, and they often do that by use of a roof wheel, which is a form of manual pulley-type system. And as long as they're careful when they do it, and they advise everybody and put a protective perimeter, safety perimeter, out and around that kettle area when they're doing that hoisting, they can go ahead and do that. What they can't do is they cannot carry hot material in buckets of ladders.
Okay, Arkansas has comparative fault. This person's client fell through a skylight that was brittle and could not hold the OSHA required weight of 400 pounds. The person asking the question is concerned that the jury will blame the client or his employer rather than the owner of the structure. They have recovered workers' comp benefits. Do you have any advice on the merits of suing the owner of the structure under these circumstances?
Well, I certainly think that's a very valid question, and it could be actually broken down into multiple questions and answered. It's just a little beyond the scope of today's event, but I would certainly be more than happy to entertain that question at another time, and if they'll get a hold of TASA, I'm sure we can help them with that.
Okay, and does OSHA do unexpected inspections, or does the company usually receive notification prior to inspections?
No, actually, inspections by OSHA are often triggered by a phone call. And those phone calls can come from employees, workers. It can come from somebody observing something going on that job. It can result from somebody passing by a project and seeing something. And that someone could even be an OSHA employee or agency inspector. There is no advance warning from OSHA on an inspection, although they must provide you with that opening conference before they actually launch onto your job site. In other words, they can't just walk in and burst through a gate and start inspecting your job without giving you notification once they arrive on site. Although recently I did see an interesting scenario where some dangerous work was going on the side of a building of about 12 stories above the street, and when a call was made to OSHA about that, they actually got on the phone and called the contractor up and resolved the issue over the phone and had the problem solved without without actually having to come on site. Whether they conducted a follow-up call after that or not is anyone's guess, but these types of environments where the inspections happen are not always announced, that's for sure.
Okay, our next question is, does custom and practice require installation of fall protection anchor to be used with harness before ascending roof to begin work?
Very, very good question. Usually what we do is, and this goes for pretty much all the trades, when we get ready to proceed to bring a crew up on the rooftop, the foreman should have gone up there and established anchor points and fall protection tie-off zones at the rooftop or at the work zone prior to bringing the crew up there to do work. So usually it's handled by what we call the fall protection competent person, and that individual is trained to go up with his or her fall protection equipment on and take the required amount of roof anchorage or equipment with them, such as they can go up and set up a minimal anchor point, and then they can have the other materials hoisted up onto the rooftop, such as the delineators and flags, and then he can measure back 6 feet from the edge of the roof and establish those protective borders and barriers for the roofing. And once that rooftop is safe, he can then radio for the crew to then join him on the roof, and they can proceed with the roofing work.
Okay, and when the work site is closed for the evening and overnight, are there any OSHA regulations regarding the safety of equipment to prevent injury from pedestrians or the general public?
There certainly is a lot of potential liability there. Here's one of the big things. Materials getting blown off a rooftop by wind. They'll take sheeting material up and stack it up on top of a rooftop. It is part of customary practice, and there are rules and regulations that mandate and ensure that work is secured. Materials are weighted down, they're covered, or they're secured in place so that they don't end up down and on top of pedestrians walking below a construction project. And certainly there is a number of considerations there. And I have personally seen materials that have flown off a rooftop by wind, and therefore we need to take all of those things into consideration when we are wrapping up or rolling up our tools at the end of the day. We need to consider everything, and of course my advice is to conduct a full walk-through inspection at the top of the roof to see if there's anything loose or anything that needs to be secured or tied down, and then by all means get it done.
Okay, our next question is, a builder is working on a homeowner's roof. He invites the homeowner to come up onto the roof to see his work. The builder holds up the top of the ladder while the homeowner climbs up. The ladder falls and the homeowner is injured. Is the builder liable?
It's a very touchy area. Certainly I could not ever say, and it would certainly be up to the trier of fact to make that determination, but I would certainly say that would be something that would certainly be argued in a court. And so we always have to think about that. I empathize with the contractor and, of course, the injured party when you think about it. I mean, homeowners they want to see what's going on. They certainly want to be able to look at what's being planned and the progress that's being made. Sometimes it's better having the roofer take some digital shots and discuss it over a cool beverage, non-alcoholic, of course, in the privacy of the homeowner's safe environment as opposed to being conducted on the rooftop. I think I would be very careful about inviting somebody up there while I was on top of the roof. If I were the contractor, I would certainly maybe want to discuss that with his counsel, legal counsel, to determine if there's some preventative measures that could be drafted to preclude any type of problems. That isn't to say, though, that injury still won't happen.
Could you comment further on the use of torches in fire prevention?
Yes. That is something that certainly needs to be taken care of. And there's a number of certification courses that are available out there for the roofing trade. Roof torches are used to heat materials up, especially in what they call the built-up roof types, where they use tar and then they heat it up and then they lay down materials on top. Therefore, the tar actually works as an adhesive, or they're using light gravel. So you can send workers to specialized training for torch work. There's a training called CERTA. The CERTA safety classes, are sponsored by the National Roofing Contractors Association. There's also the trainer classes. We call those CERTA authorized trainers, and essentially that is all about certified roofing torch applicators. So that training is comprehensive, and they are given an opportunity to take a proactive approach to the use of torches on the roof, and especially when they're applying what they call polymer modified bitumen membrane and flashings, and especially when they're doing that over a potentially combustible substrate. So the Certified Torch Applicator Program gives them a training on the latest safety practices, industry requirements for torch activity, and they have training manuals, video instruction, there's hands-on portions, and I am increasingly finding a lot of certified applicators out there, and you pretty much know right off who is and who isn't trained when you watch how they stage their torch on the rooftop, how they leave it and where they leave it. And another way that you know right off that you're dealing with a trained party is how the propane or LPG cylinders are secured on the job site. Often those types of cylinders, although they're up on the rooftop, they've been carried up there by an elevator. An example would be those 100-gallon containers are, so they don't have to run those long hoses, are loaded on an elevator once again and brought up onto the roof with a hand truck. And if those containers are knocked over, the potential for breaking off one of those valves opens up considerable hazards to the workers and also the risk of fire and explosion. So being a certified torch user is a good thing, and so safe application of torch-applied roofing systems is highly recommended.
Thank you for answering those questions, Daniel. We'll now continue on to the CLE information.
Sure.
This webinar is eligible for CLE credit in California, Illinois, Minnesota, Missouri, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Texas. To ensure that you receive your CLE credit, please complete the survey at the end of the presentation. In addition to being your best source for testifying and consulting experts, TASA also offers e-discovery and document management solutions, free interactive webinars, research reports on expert witnesses such as the Challenge History Report 2.0, the Professional Sanction Search, and the Expert Profile 360. I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone for attending, and most especially Daniel O'Connell for his time and effort in creating this presentation. If you would like to speak with Mr. O'Connell or if you would like to speak with a TASA representative regarding an expert witness for a case that you are working on, please contact TASA at 1-800-523-2319. This is a reminder that we will be sending out a link to you tomorrow with the archived recording. The archived recording will also be posted in the Knowledge Center on TASA's website. If you have any questions or comments, please email Carol Kowaleski. Thank you all again for attending today, and have a great day, everyone.